Welcome to Loup TV. I'm your host, Gene Munster, along with Michael Stokesbury. Michael is a full-time realtor. This is his bread and butter in the greater Minneapolis area. Welcome, Michael. We have you on today to talk about the Zestimate. That's the substance of the conversation. But before we get into that, I wanted to take a step back and tell you what's happened in our world, the Loup world, over the last couple of weeks. Is we've announced that we're investors in Zillow and Opendoor. We also have been talking more about the Zestimate, and we have gotten a flood of mail through professional realtors across the country giving us their opinion that has been quite negative in terms of the Zestimate and Zillow overall and the likelihood that this can succeed. And I'm not putting you in a place where you have to support that view or don't have to support that view, but I want to give you some context about what motivated us to bring you on is this, I guess, wave of frustration and the investing community doesn't get it, like the Zestimate's not for real. Before we get into that, so thank you for coming. Thank you for helping give a voice to those emails. And before we get into that, I would just love to hear how you think about Zillow, just overall. If Zillow was going to be gone tomorrow, would you say that's a good thing for your business or a bad thing?
Thanks for having me on, Gene. I would say if Zillow were to leave tomorrow, my business itself would be fairly neutral. I don't necessarily lead generate from Zillow. A lot of people do. And for agents, that would be probably the prime benefit that Zillow gives them.
So this would be real estate professionals that are advertising on Zillow essentially for lead gen.
Correct. Yeah. I do that, but I do it in a very, very small amount. I think Zillow is good for the consumers. I think it's the best search engine out there for finding a house. I think in the past, when I first started in real estate, people would use Edina Realty here in the Twin Cities market. Edina Realty had like the best website to search for homes, and I think Zillow has now become the number one to find homes, to share homes. I mean, you saw the Saturday Night Live skit where people are sharing the Zillow home.
Yeah, it's medication for people, pandemic kind of medication,
Yeah.
undoubtedly. And so from this concept, the top of the funnel, I suspect that most people find homes on Zillow. Is that accurate? Is that buyers typically, are they driving around in their cars these days? Are they just sitting home on their couch looking at Zillow?
Yeah, it's a combination of either probably a Zillow or through their agent search. So most often agents will set up a home search straight from the MLS, send it to their buyers, and the buyers will utilize that because they're getting all the data. Zillow doesn't necessarily get all the data. It gets most of the data, and they can get it immediately.
Got it. So you have like a prescription grade search that you can do. I didn't realize that can fill in some data. What would be some of the data that's missing between the searches that you're doing versus someone doing a filtered Zillow search?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing would probably be if there's an offer accepted on the home already. I haven't seen that on Zillow. You can see days on market a little bit easier than on Zillow. You have to kind of scroll through things a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think it's just laid out a little bit better with the key metrics. I think Zillow's a marketing tool. They're trying to drive revenue through showcasing agents or lenders, and of course their Zestimate is a marketing tool as well. When they
Well, let's get into that. I'm glad you mentioned Zestimate because that is our A topic today, and would love to hear when, let's say, a potential seller comes to you, says, Michael, I need help selling my home. Just looked up what percentage of them will bring the Zestimate up in a early conversation that you'd have when they're selling their home?
I would say a rare amount, 5%.
5%. That's it.
Yeah, I'd say it happens, but it doesn't happen often.
That's shocking. I mean, from my perspective, I would think that 90% of people would say it, but they don't bring it up, and they might not bring it up. Is it in the back of their minds? Have they looked it up?
I would say at least half probably know it. Maybe it's fun if it's going up and you've lived in your house for a while and you can feel a little wealthier, but
right.
I have a listing that's coming up right now, and the Zestimate's, I think, 90,000 more than we're expecting to get, and they know that, so they realize the Zestimate's not the truth for them.
Got it. Okay, so let's say in the rare time that someone does come to you with this estimate, what do you respond to that? They say my home is worth $400,000 and the estimate says 400. What's your response?
I try to show what I think it's worth, I guess. The Zestimate's kind of like the tax assessed value from the, call it the 90s. It's an algorithm, it's taking in data points. And I mean, it can do more than the human brain, obviously, in that point. You know, we can only assess so many bits of information, whereas they can just continually throw more out into the Zestimate. But the human brain, for the limitations it has, also has imagination and creativity. And when you're in a home, you can feel the ceiling heights and the sunlight pouring in, and you can
Yeah,
see
let me hit that point. First question on the 400. Someone comes to you, you say, I'll go and walk the house myself and give you my view of the valuation. And then you, in that, you're taking in the intangibles that it's more difficult for a machine to capture today. You talk about the sunlight, maybe the little details about the crack in a wall or not. And that's the human advantage. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's things that the Zestimate just can't see, because the Zestimate's kind of like a PE ratio or a sales to revenue ratio, where
Speaking my language, Michael,
yeah,
appreciate that.
it's not exactly price per square feet. It takes in other things, but that's not always what somebody bases their home value off, you know. And if the block had a bunch of mature trees in the past and a tornado came through and wiped out those trees, and it just has a different feel sometimes. And I don't feel this estimate has that right now. So kind of back to your question, how would I price it? I think you got to look at what's on the market. You know, it's supply and demand, and you kind of get a band of, hey, here's some homes that are at 425 and they're out there. That's your competition. Here's some homes at 375. That's your competition. We're just a slight bit below that 425. We're quite a bit better than that 375. So we can maybe price 415. Like, that's kind of how
And
I
this is a
price.
whole new, I'm feeling like I'm having some out of body experience somewhere between a statistician meets an auctioneer here as you start talking about these numbers here, but it makes a lot of sense about how a human can bring all these together. And as you would think about all those factors you talked, the pros and the cons, you just went through a sequence of how you come up with the prices, you put all that together and you think about like how reliable, not reliable is the Zestimate. If I could give you three factors here, it is not reliable, neutral reliable, or reliable. Which bucket would you put that into?
I would call it neutral. I mean, and I looked up a home that I was kind of curious about before I came on here. And one thing I could say about this estimate is it doesn't seem to have a backbone yet. So
Doesn't have a backbone. Okay.
yeah, there was a house. I got my notes here. The Zestimate was 440. The house went for sale on December 26th, and the Zestimate turned to 417. So it came down 23,000.
Okay.
Sold for 460. So,
up again. Okay.
And the Zestimate's now 463. So the Zestimate was closer to what it was before the home was listed, but then it went down and then it went back up, you know. So it's kind of like
no backbone. That's a great, it kind of gets blown around in the wind. And that I think speaks to it needs work. By the way, we have in our Loops research, we've documented the phenomenon that Michael's talking about. Check that out. As we think about the credibility around the Zestimate longer term, let's fast forward 5 years. Do you think you'll be hearing more about the Zestimate, the same about the Zestimate, or less about Zestimate?
I think it'll be less than it is today, just because today is today because it recently came out with, they'll pay you in certain markets, certain price ranges, the Zestimate price. But, you know, I think that's just a little bit of a marketing ploy, you know. Like, I don't think it's going to be the Kelley Blue Book of cars in 5 years, you know, which I think would be great. I mean, I remember when I bought my first car with my dad, we went to the library. That's how old I am. We had to get the Kelley Blue Book there. And
I'm older, but know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, but I think there's too many intangibles unless there's some robot that visits the home to tell you what the price is after it computates all of what it can see. And they're not going to be able to do that until a home is for sale and out there on the market. My home personally, I looked up the Zestimate before this, and we just bought it recently, and it's worth, I don't know, 70,000 less than we paid according to the Zestimate. I think it's probably worth 100,000 more than the Zestimate.
Yep.
So I wouldn't want to go out and sell my home for the Zestimate, lose money on it, and then risk buying another home that's too high of a Zestimate.
You're really getting into a lot of topics around the opportunity around iBuying and price transparency in real estate. And it's pretty clear to me after hearing you is that we're not there. The Zestimate is not there. It is work in progress. If you are curious about the facts, I talked about some of the research. If you look at the accuracy of the Zestimate, there's really two camps within it. There's an off-market Zestimate, which is the vast majority, 95% of them. And then there's on-market, which is about the balance of that. The on-market estimates tend to be more accurate, and they get it within 1.5%, about 85, I think it is, percent of the time, 80% of the time. Humans, we just did a spot check of 30 different properties in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and Duluth, Minnesota. Check your maps on those, and found that humans got it right initially where it was priced at about 70% of the time within that 1.5% error. So not all estimates are created equal. That doesn't matter. The data doesn't matter. What matters is what you think, what your customers think. And what I'm taking away from this is the estimate's got some work to do as it moves forward. We'd love to have you back, talk about iBuying. That's a whole nother juicy opportunity. But thank you for, I guess, course correcting, fine tuning, whatever it would be, and have fun out there. I mean, the market, the residential real estate market couldn't be more fun. I mean, I've got like visions of careers dance in my head at night thinking I'd love to be a realtor these days. Thank you, Michael, for taking the time. On behalf of Michael, the Zestimate, myself, Gene, and Loup TV, bye for now.